Okay, we're live here trying to figure out the Aetherium system. This is going to be a blog live feed of what exactly I'm building in real time to try and help me stay organized and also clue people into what I'm building and how this could benefit them going forward. So, and it's also a way for me to just start to speak and get clear myself on what I'm doing. Ethereum is a navigation system. It's a way of getting into flow across your life, with work being one of those primary objectives. And I've been coding a whole system in order to try and get into a persistent workflow to build on itself. So yeah, this is going to be a way of documenting the journey. This is going to be an input layer for my whole system. Is going live, taking the transcript and flowing it back into the Ethereum Life OS infrastructure. Life OS is the overall infrastructure of how someone engages with Ethereum and directs their intention and helps them make choices towards doing everything in their life that they need to do in one organized fashion, fully orchestrated by AI. So that's the goal. And I'm going to clue you into what it is that I'm actually trying to build in real time. So I'm in Claude Code, or no, I've got Claude on one screen. I've got ChatGPT on the other. My web browser up on front, the YouTube studio down below. And yeah, we're going to try and get into this workflow. So what I'm trying to do right now is boot up the system. So I've created a whole folder structure on my computer, and I'm taking everything from my past life and running it through this Life OS to understand all of the files in a determined folder structure that we've come up with it being an agentic workflow. So all of these folder structures have been set up so that the Claude Code, can fully interpret everything that is currently in that system to try and get it up to a point where it knows exactly where I left off as soon as I open up the screen, so as soon as I boot up the prompt. So far today, with Claude, I've got Claude Code and Claude Chat. In the Life OS system, I've got a prompt that boots up the system, gets it to read the entire folder structure and all the files in it to get back up aware of where we left off. So I tried to start that in the chat. Chat doesn't have access to the folders, so it's got to be through code. In code, then I've dropped that prompt that I have for continuing previous work to give me some output or give me a sense of like, okay, here's where we are at. It's got all these logs in it, right? So the idea is that you have to close out each session and log everything that you've done in that prior session. The challenge I'm facing is being able to work remotely and at desktop seamlessly and have the system be persistent. So I left off yesterday after doing a long Life OS sprint, then saying, okay, we need to test out Claude voice. So while I'm driving, for example, I want to engage with the AI to get my thinking out there. And even that produces a output, this long thread but it doesn't get back into the system to know where I left off from that latest thinking. And this is the problem, is that I've got so many files, iterations, threads across ChatGPT and now Claude that are not talking to each other, that are not building upon each other. And I feel like every time I start, I have to get it back up to a point where it's aware of where I left off and what it's referencing. Hence why trying to create this Life OS infrastructure layer to Ethereum is so crucial, because we want continuous evolution, awareness, and navigation to actually create something that is fully coherent and fully autonomous eventually. So, all right, I'm back in. So I took the code and I worked between code and chat to try and get to this point of being fully aware of what's going on. But the challenge is also the voice. So Claude chat has a microphone input for what I'm saying, but it doesn't have the conversational style like Claude voice does on mobile. So I'm probably going to bring up Claude voice in order to have that entity be what I'm engaging with over time, and help it orient me to doing the work that I need to do, both in code and chat. All the while, I've got these other AIs too that have a lot of awareness as to what I've done thus far. And I'm trying to make that all part of the system. So yesterday, I requested an export from ChatGPT on my full conversation history over the last couple of years. It's today is, let's see, April 25th, 2026. I probably started talking to chat, regularly in 2024. So over the course of the last year and a half, there's been a ton of conversations full-blown conversations that I've had with chat, and it's built up a lot of ideas, a lot of in-depth work, of me kind of just processing my life, processing my work, and everything in between. So requesting that export, the idea is that I'm going to take all of that chat log history and then work through it with code in order to file it properly into the folder structure of Life OS. And so that will hopefully build up this sort of brain that I'm trying to build, so that it's a accurate reflection of who I am, what I'm about, and what I'm trying to do in the world. So yeah, it's a lot of effort to try and get it up to this point of having it be useful and actually fully aware of who I am, which is an ongoing unfolding, right? In an evolving universe, that is the nature of everything. So this is a messy way of understanding how to go about doing this and take this new artificial intelligence that we have access to and put it to work to serve humanity, serve our continued evolution across consciousness and culture, and really serve the individual who's trying to actually make a difference in the world, which is exactly my case here. All right, so I started with the prompt that I had for chat. That didn't work because it had no memory. So I booted up the Life OS system with Claude Code to get it aware of what we were doing. I then had it inform chat as to what we're doing. And so now we're at a point of using what Claude Code has now provided it in terms of context into the chat. And within chat, I've got different projects that I'm trying to adhere to, which this is part of the process today is trying to fill in the gaps in the Life OS system so that it's more context aware as to where I'm actually at in this overarching goal of mine to create Ethereum, to document my philosophy. Your connection is unstable. So this is part of my problem is I need to actually leverage the Ethernet connection. I have yet to plug that Ethernet connection into my system here, but yeah, Wi-Fi does not seem to be the sufficient bandwidth that I need, but it's been pretty darn good. But now that I'm streaming, it's going to be, obviously affected. All right, so I've got Claude Chat up here. Okay, we're live on YouTube documenting the journey. I'm 12 minutes into the stream at this point. So yeah, I've been building a lot over the last months. So nice, you're doing it. That's the hardest part. 12 minutes in means you're past the awkward is this thing on phase and into actual work. Don't break flow to manage me. I'll be here when you're back. One thing worth knowing, for when you wrap, the stream itself is now an input to the system. The decisions you're making out loud right now about format, about Ethereum framing, about how this practice works are the kind of thing that should land somewhere durable when you're done. A short session log entry, even 3 sentences beats trying to remember what you decided when you watched the recording back in 2 weeks. So the idea is that we are capturing raw footage, and we'll use this, use the transcript from these sessions as yet another input into the system to become aware of what we are doing. Just like the voice chats with Claude and ChatGPT, which we have requested an output of in order to flow it into the Life OS system. With Claude voice, like we did last night. I had a really productive session last night in the car. And that was with voice. So even that is not flowing properly into this overarching system, right? Chat has captured it and it's in the system, in the voice chat records, but it has yet to inform the Life OS. So this is the disconnect. It's like you have a really in-depth conversation with voice and you get really clear with actual outputs, which the outputs are very important. I'm trying to have it structured at the end of a conversation to summarize it in bullet points, to make it more into structured output for the different social platforms, and a kind of a summation of what it is that we're actually doing. But it doesn't hit the Life OS system, the folder structure, the context aware system. So I'm trying to figure out what is the intentional layer that I work through so that it all ends up trickling down and getting stored, getting actually creating the necessary output to produce in the world, to get my ideas out there and flowing. So let's see, Claude Chat says, right, and now the shape of what you're actually building is clear. You're not making content, you're building a personal corpus. Every modality you work in, YouTube streams, Claude voice sessions, ChatGPT conversations, eventually probably written notes, and the GoPro archive. And I was starting to do all of these, look through old hard drives that I have, external hard drives, to get that organized. The system gets progressively more aware of what you're doing because it has more of you to read. That's a coherent design, and explains why the streaming question wasn't real about streaming. It was about adding another input source to the corpus. A few things worth naming now that the picture is clear. The bottleneck isn't capture, it's ingestion. You already have multiple input streams generating transcripts. Voice last night, ChatGPT export requested, now YouTube. Each one produces a file in a different format with different metadata dropped in different places. Without a convention for how transcripts enter LifeOS, you're going to end up with a pile of .vtt or .txt files in various inboxes and no way to know which session produced which file or what was decided in any of them. The thing that makes the corpus useful, not just large, is some lightweight structure on the way in, not heavy, probably just a consistent file name convention, a consistent location, and one or two line front matter at the top noting source, date, and what the session was about. That's enough for code to find things later. You don't need to solve this before the current stream ends, but it's the first thing worth working on once you have 2 or 3 transcripts sitting in different places and you can feel the shape of the problem. Second thing, the corpus has a forward-looking property worth being aware of. Once you have a meaningful body of transcripts in the system, the next step isn't just code can read them when asked, it's that you can ask the corpus questions. What have I said about the 3-tier model across the last 10 sessions? Where did I first articulate the LifeOS as infrastructure framing? What decisions have I made, then walked back? So again, persistence is really the problem. You can get out a whole bunch of stuff in a thread and then start a new thread and has no real solid understanding of what was done previously. So that's a different kind of tool than what you have now. It requires the corpus to be searchable in a way, probably some indexing layer, possibly embeddings, possibly just well-organized markdown that code can grep, but it's the payoff. A pile of transcript is just a pile. A queryable corpus is a thinking partner that knows everything you've ever said. You're not there yet, and you don't need to be, but knowing that's where this is going changes how you design the ingestion pipeline today. For now, finish the stream, download the transcript when YouTube processes it, drop it somewhere in LifeOS. Even a rough location is fine. Same for the voice transcript from last night and the ChatGPT export when it arrives. Once you have 3 or 4 transcripts sitting in the system, that's the moment to design the ingestion convention. Designing it before you have raw material to design against it is premature. So the whole day ended on the fact that today my intention was to actually go through a structured interview process to answer all the questions that the Life OS system needs to be aware of my latest thinking. And so this chat session last night in the car was a way for me to try and get out enough information to make it context aware. So right now I'm on Opus 4.7. I'm going to press and hold to record an injection. So I'm going to speak to the chat session. So Claude, or Claudia, as I like to refer to Claude, the Claude ecosystem. So scratch all of that. So it's not aware of what I'm actually asking it to do. All right. So basically, last night we had a voice chat session with Claude, and I have that transcript in the thread. It's just a straggling thread. It wasn't part of a particular project, right? Because you can have chats within each project, I believe. Or you can definitely have chats. I don't know if you can have voice conversations, but the idea was that I had that one as a preliminary meeting of the mind to have it be aware of what that input looks like before we even go through a more formal interview process, which we had created yesterday in a Claude chat session. So what I need to do right now is copy and paste, I think, that full chat history and copy it into this new chat window for it to be aware of how we need to work this into the system as yet one of the other inputs. So this is almost documenting how I'm trying to have a voice session, what comes back, and how we can actually ingest it into the system. Because seemingly, chat does not communicate with code directly. And so this is part of the architecture problem that we're having. Okay, so it just conked out on me in how much I'm able to input, and it didn't take. So that voice feature is kind of sucks, right? It's trying to transcribe what I'm saying in real time as a command, and it's having a hard time ingesting it. So again, I had a voice session last night as a preliminary meeting before what we said we were going to do today, which was a structured interview process to explain the whole universe of what I'm endeavoring to build. Would it be helpful for you to see how that chat went by copying it into this thread so that we can think through what the overall architecture looks like and how we can feed that into LifeOS, and in turn update the interview process that we said we were going to go through. Gosh, it's such a hard thing to try and figure it out. But this is part of the goal, is to think out loud, understand what the problem is and how to actually solve it. And the problem really in my mind is persistent thinking that is able to really articulate who I am, why I'm here, and where we're going with this all. Yes, paste it. 2 reasons it's worth doing now, not later. 1, it's directly relevant to what we're working on right now. You're 12 plus minutes into a stream about figuring out the format, and the voice transcript is exactly the kind of input that's supposed to feed back into the system. Reading it together in this session with the streaming context live means whatever we figure out about architecture can also inform how the stream itself becomes an input. 3 input modalities: voice, chat, stream, all converging on the same question. 2, the interview was designed yesterday before you'd actually had the preliminary voice session. That means the interview structure was built on assumptions about what the voice surfaced, not on the voice itself. Now you have the actual material. The interview probably needs revision before you run it. And the right time to revise it is after I've seen what the voice session actually produced, not before. Practical things before you paste it. If it's long, don't worry about formatting. Paste it raw, even if it's messy. Auto transcript, I can work with the rough text. If there are clear sections or topics, a quick header or timestamp here, and there helps me orient, but it's not required. Okay, so what I'm trying to create is an agentic workflow, right? I want to have a voice chat. I want it transcribed. I came up with specific bullet point. I asked it to kind of make a bullet pointed breakdown, a nice summary, even ideas for how to turn that content into content itself and have it run through the whole system. But right now it's just sitting straggling as a recorded history, a recorded voice chat, a transcribed voice chat. So again, I'm trying to figure out how can the system automatically take that transcript and file it into the system, inform the LifeOS system. One thing to be aware of as you paste, this is now a meaningfully longer session than we'd had so far, and I'll be holding LifeOS context, the streaming context, the Aetherium reframe, the voice transcript, and the interview design simultaneously. That's fine. Just flagging that if you notice me losing thread later, the right move is to remind me of the specific thing I'm losing, not repaste everything. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste one of these example conversations that I had with chat. with voice yesterday. And it was a really good session. We thought through a lot. It was really valuable. And I think that the chat history is indicative of a lot of what the system actually needs in order to become persistent. So I'm now copying and pasting that history into the new thread. Read it, read it. Now I see the actual shape of what you're building, and a few things stand out that are worth surfacing before you keep streaming. What I see in this transcript, this was you doing genuine architectural thinking out loud, not a discovery session, more a consolidation session. Most of the major pieces were already in your head. Voice Claude's role was mostly to mirror them back so you could hear them and confirm they hold together. That's valuable, but it's worth naming. This transcript is a record of you articulating, not of you discovering. The interview today was supposed to be the deeper download. This was the warm-up. So there's a lot here. Now it's like, okay, do I have to read all of this? Themes that crystallize. The Aetherium as orchestration, Life OS as infrastructure framing was already there last night. So when you reframed it earlier in our chat today, you weren't generating a new idea, you were recalling one. That's good. It means the framing is sticky and is surviving across sessions, which is a sign it's load-bearing. The intentional conversations as primary input thesis is the actual core insight of last night. Intentional conversations as primary input. So like actually going into a session with clear intention. Everything else, the 6-platform distribution, the content machine, the 7-day cycle as product is downstream of that one move. Voice on mobile is the input. The system does the rest. That's the whole architecture in one sentence. So what I want to try and build and get to is I have one source of input, have an intentional conversation, and the system files it, makes it persistent across time, actually generates real valuable output from it as well. The 3 content pillars, book, course, chrisporto.me, and the philosophy name, navigating the way, appeared late in the transcript and weren't really developed. They're flagged as important, but they're specified. That's a gap. So I want to write a book. I want to create a course. I want to build out my personal brand, chrisporto.me, and the philosophy itself, which I'm calling Navigate the Way, or Navigating the Way. All the while also building Aetherium, which is kind of the culturally relevant platform that helps people navigate their lives and get into flow. Things that surprised me are load-bearing. You name revenue explicitly and forcefully near the end. This has to be part of the equation, how you can actually design this and build this with me to make lots of money. That's a different register than the philosophy intention layer. It's worth noticing because it changes what the interview today should be. It's not just a vision download, it's a vision and business download. Those needs to be held together or they'll diverge. The line, even when I die, that I could still continue to operate without me, is a much bigger statement than it might look. It says the system has to be designed for succession, not just personal use. That's a real constraint, and it should probably be one on the table during the interview because it changes architectural choices. So basically I was saying that I want the system to persist beyond me. If it has the whole canon of what I'm trying to articulate, that it should be able to continue to generate content from that ongoingly when I'm not even here. The compass is already live at compass.aetherium.one. That's a beachhead you already have. The transcript treats this almost in passing, but it's significant. You're not building from zero. You have a live product with a real URL that changes the urgency and shape of what's next. So if you visit compass.aetherium, Aetherium.one, compass.aetherium.one, there's a new tool that I've just released that I think is a really good foundational piece. The Life OS as product question is unresolved. Last night you said if Life OS becomes its own product that people buy separately, it needs its own identity. That's a forked path decision that wasn't closed. Is Life OS something only you use, private infrastructure that powers Ethereum, or is it also something you sell? Those are very different products with different interview questions, different builds, different revenue models. The current framing keeps both alive, which is fine for now, but the interview should at least name the question. So again, I'm trying to get this input to help inform what the next step is that I need to go through in order to document and go and answer all the questions that the system needs in order to design itself. There are at least 3 different orchestration layer candidates floating around: Ethereum itself, N8N, Make, Zapier, Claude Code. Last night, Voice Claude conflated these in a few places. The truth is they're at different levels of the stack. Ethereum equals the intention layer. Philosophy, what matters. N8N, Make is the wiring layer. Claude Code is the reasoning layer. They're complements, not alternatives. The interview should clarify this so you don't go in thinking you have to pick one. Essentially, what we're trying to do is create a whole system and have a tech stack that enables all this to happen, where my role is setting the intention, making the decisions, and putting the top level input into the system and have it do all the work that it needs to do, or I need to do, like writing the book, creating the course, putting content out consistently. The audience is undefined. Throughout the transcript, people is used generically, but the 7-day cycle, the content strategy, the conversation funnel, they all require a specific audience to design against. Who is this for? What's the avatar? That's a question the interview hasn't been built to ask, and it needs to be. The equipment inventory thread is real, but operational, not architectural. It can be a follow-on task after the interview, not part of it. Don't let it eat interview time. How this should change today's interview. I haven't seen the interview script. You mentioned it was created in a chat session yesterday, but it's not in this thread. Before going further, I want to read that. So I'm going to download the, which I did. And anything that I'm downloading now, I'm trying to file away into the Life OS architecture, into the system. So let's see, yesterday, drive archaeology, observation, core, starters, diagrams. Part of it is like, where does all of this stuff live? So I'm trying to get away from actually filing stuff myself and only have the system itself file it away, which I'm not sure if I did that yesterday. System, core. Yeah, I'm not sure if I downloaded that. Let's see, downloads. No, I didn't. Okay, so, but part of the problem is we as human beings aren't the best organizers. So I don't want to actually touch the folders. I would just want the system to organize it properly so that it's additive and it's part of the system, so that I'm not kind of filing things away sporadically. I want this to be an organization system. Before going any further, I want to read it. A section on the Life OS is product question, fork it open, don't leave it ambient. A section on audience, who this is for, with enough specificity to design against. A section on revenue, a meta observation worth holding. Last night, you and Voice Claude built a comprehensive plan in about an hour. Today's interview is supposed to be the deeper download. There's a real risk that the interview just recovers the same ground and produces another summary that says the same thing silently or slightly more thoroughly. To prevent that, the interview needs to be deliberately go deeper than last night into the philosophy, into the audience, into the actual mechanics of how revenue works, rather than redoing the architecture conversation. But my fear is that I didn't actually articulate the whole plan, the whole vision. And so I really want to make sure that that actually gets in there too. What I'd suggest now, if you can paste the interview transcript, the one created yesterday in chat, I can read it against the transcript and tell you specifically where it overlaps with last night already covered. If the transcript isn't easy accessible, which direction you want to go. So I want last night's conversation in voice to be, let's see. I want last night's conversation via voice to be documented and filed away in the Life OS system. So what should I do as a trigger to Claude Code for documenting what exactly came out of that? And again, what I've been trying to think about is I want a very brief summary. I want a nice title. I want a bullet point breakdown of what was covered. And I also want the key outputs. So in this case, we made it very clear that some of the key outputs were different types of social media posts that could be created based upon what we did. So what would the process be for taking a voice session and filing it into the the LifeOS system via Claude Code? And what is the prompt that I need in order to do that? Good. This is the first real ingestion pipeline question you've asked, and answering it well now sets the pattern for every future transcript, this stream included. Worth slowing down for. Let me separate two things before they're going to keep getting tangled. The process. What should happen to a transcript when it enters the system? This is a system design question. It should be a written conversation in LifeOS, not something you redecide every time. The prompt. What you say to code today to handle this specific transcript. This is the immediate need. You need both, but in that order. Otherwise, you end up with one transcript filed nicely and the next one filed differently and no convention to point to. The process, proposed convention for any voice, chat, stream transcript entering LifeOS, the canonical processing should produce a session document with consistent structure, title, date, source, brief summary, bullet point coverage, key outputs, artifacts identified, one question or unresolved threads, and links to anything that should be created downstream. A filing location that's predictable for an Ethereum relevant session like last night's, that's almost certainly somewhere under Ethereum, but where exactly depends on whether you treat session logs as inbox items, raw awaiting triage, or as active sessions items already canonical record. My instinct is the latter for processed session docs with a separate inbox transcripts for the raw transcripts themselves that separate the raw material from the structured record of what the raw material contained. A file name convention like year, month, date, source, topic, so they sort chronologically and are scannable. Last night's would be 2026, 0424, voice, Ethereum architecture, or similar. The raw transcript preserved separately. Don't throw it away after summarizing. Future you or future code might want to reread the actual words rather than the summary. The summary is lossy, is loosey. All right, so it gave me that. A few things to notice about the prompt. It does the immediate work and sets up the conversation, but it asks code to propose the convention rather than write it. So you stay in the loop on the system design decision. That's the right level of agency for what we're doing this for the first time. One real question. Right now, you're describing a process for one transcript, but within the next week, you'll have at least 3. Last night's voice session, today's YouTube stream, and the ChatGPT export when it arrives. They're all different formats and probably want significantly different ingestion. Worth being conscious that the convention you set today should generalize to all 3, not just the voice session. That doesn't mean you have to design for all 3 now. It means when code proposes the convention, evaluate it not just against last night, but against would this also work for 90-minute YouTube stream transcript and 50-page ChatGPT export. It would break under those. Define before locking in. Run the prompt. Let's see. All right, so you're right to point out that there are different streams. We've got Claude voice, Claude chat. We have ChatGPT voice. We've got ChatGPT chat. We've got voice memos on phone. We've got YouTube streams. We've got videos. Like there's a whole bunch of different types of input. So we do want to have this structured in a way where these all become these key inputs. And the Ethereum platform should have its own native inputs that we need to define, which we were kind of defining the other day. Notes, voice memos, video documentation that should all flow into this stream. So let's give the prompt that we need to process this first ingestion officially with Claude Voice, but let's document it in such a way where we are very clear on which streams that they're coming from and have the appropriate naming convention. Like, this all seems rather tedious because I'm essentially architecting how this whole system works, but I'm determined to figure out how to do it. Good, you're now thinking at the right level. The convention has to generalize across input streams, which means we need to design the taxonomy before we file the first transcript. Otherwise, we lock in patterns that don't scale. Let me lay out what I think the structure should be. Then I'll give you the prompt, read the structure first, and push back if anything's wrong. Once code files things this way, the convention is set. Input stream taxonomy, source identifier, source, format, notes. That last row is the one you flagged as needing definition. Aetherium native, TBD to be defined, notes, voice, video transcripts, file convention, source ID, topic slug, last night's transcript, today's stream, a future voice memo. The source ID is doing real work. It lets you or code filter by stream type instantly, show me all Claude voice sessions from this month. So ideally, Aetherium becomes the one input layer. That's really what I'm working towards, is have one input layer that works through the whole process. Folder structure, work, Aetherium, inbox, transcripts, O2 active sessions, process session docs live here or wherever your conventions live, system, transcript ingestion, the rules, the raw process split matters, raw is preserved verbatim, process is the structured summary you actually navigate by. You can always go back to raw. You can't restructure raw from a summary. One open question, should session docs live under each project or in a cross-project session folder? Last night's transcript touched Aetherium, navigating the way and the broader business, putting it under Aetherium sessions is a slight forcing, but cross-project session folders create their own mess. File by primary project, cross-link from secondary projects. Last night's is primarily Aetherium, and NTW session log can reference it. Code should be told this rule explicitly. Session doc structure, the schema. Date, source, duration, primary project, related projects, raw transcript. I definitely want to have location as a factor in this. Summary, coverage, key outputs identified, decisions made, open questions unresolved, connections, notes. The split between outputs, things to create, and decisions, commitments made is worth keeping separate. They have different downstream behavior. Outputs become tasks, decisions become canon material. The prompt for code. This is the first transcript ingestion into LifeOS, and we're using it to establish the convention for all future transcripts across all input streams. Things to do, establish the convention, input streams, Claude Voice, Claude Chat, ChatGPT Voice, ChatGPT Chat, voice memo, YouTube Live, video, Aetherium native. File convention, product assignment rule, session doc, ingest the first transcript using this convention, paste the full Claude Voice transcript. A few things to notice about this prompt. It does the convention work first, meaning by the time code processes the actual transcript, the rules are already written down. The placeholder for Aetherium native is intentionally said the platform will have native inputs that need defining, leaving the slot open to the convention. One thing I'd watch for in code's response, if code comes back saying the existing folder structure doesn't have system conventions, active sessions, do you want me to create them? So run it, then tell me what came back and we can stress test. Okay, that all sounds good. If there is a way to document the location of all of this input. That would be interesting as well to map it out in the future as yet another way to summarize what was done where. Because I want this system to work mobily so I can be out in the world traveling and not have to be bound to a particular location. Yes, and what you're describing has a name in systems thinking, an index or a registry, a single document that knows all about all the others. Right now, your transcripts will be scattered across project folders by primary project to find everything I did on April 24th, or every Claude voice session that this month, or what's in the system from YouTube Live. You'd have to grep across the whole tree. That works, but it's reactive. You only find things when you go looking. A registry inverts that. It's a single file that gets appended to every time a transcript is ingested with one line entry per session. You scan one document and see the whole landscape. Proposed add a transcripts registry to the convention. Location, or whatever your registry naturally lives. Code should propose if system registries doesn't exist yet. Format a simple table. Transcripts registry, a chronological index of all transcripts ingested into Life OS across all input streams and projects. So trying to create a registry. That's it. 5 columns, 1 row per transcript, sortable by any column if you ever ask code to pivot the view. Why this shape? It's a flat ledger, not a hierarchy. Hierarchies break when content spans categories. Ledgers don't, because each row is just a row. You filter by column when you need a view. It doesn't duplicate the session docs themselves. It just points to them. It's append only. Code never has to modify old entries. Update to the prompt. Add a 4th instruction to part 1. In part 2, ingesting what this unlocks downstream. Once the registry exists, you can ask code things like summarize my last week of work across all input streams, and has a single document to scan rather than walking the whole tree. That's a meaningful efficiency gain when the corpus has 50 plus sessions. It also gives you a rhythm view. Glance at the registry and immediately see how often you're capturing from which stream and on which projects. If you go 3 weeks without any voice memos, but lots of YouTube Live, that's information about how you're actually working, not what you intended to do, but what you did. That's the kind of feedback loop a personal operating system should give you. One thing to watch, registries are only useful if they stay current. If code or you ingests a transcript and forgets to update the registry, you have silent drift. The registry says you have 12 sessions, but the file system has 14. After a few drift events, the registry stops being trustworthy. The fix, make registry update part of the ingestion process, not a separate step. The convention doc should be explicit that a transcript ingestion is incomplete until the registry row is written. Run the updated prompt. Okay. So give me the master prompt to create this and take in yesterday's voice session via Claude as one as the first primary ingestion. It should also be used to update all of the other important areas in the system with my latest thinking. So we want some sort of like input that feeds back. This needs to be designed in such a way where the system has these feedback loops from the ingestion to update all of the other areas. Projects, tasks, notes, actions, triggers, etc. Whatever we say, in those inputs should bubble up to either make decisions change course or take specific actions automatically or with or after those decisions. It's like this is the whole point of the system, is that like you ingest and then you funnel back. Stop before I write the master prompt. I need to push back because what you just described is bigger than it sounds, and the gap matters, obviously. What you've now asked for is two different things rolled into one prompt. Thing one is a transcript ingestion convention. We've designed this. It's well scoped, files in order. Thing two is a feedback loop system that propagates a session's content into projects, tasks, notes, actions, triggers across all of the Life OS. We're talking on the phone updates your task list where decisions made in voice ripple in the canon, where the system automatically takes actions or quotes. Thing two is architecturally separate from the thing one and substantially harder. Conflating them in one prompt is going, okay, so run the master prompt I'm about to give you, which does thing one rigorously. After that runs cleanly and yesterday's session is filed, you'll have one beautifully ingested transcript and a working convention. Then, separately, we design thing two, the propagation layer. So ingestion layer and propagation layer. That conversation will be substantial and probably its own session because it needs to define your task system, your trigger system, your decision versus output distinction, and your auto versus manual policy. Below is the master prompt for thing one. I've added one bridge, propagation candidates section in the session doc schema. This is not automation. It's just code flagging what could propagate where as a list for you to act on manually. That gives you the feedback loop behavior in primitive form without building the actual propagation machinery yet. When we build thing two later, that section becomes the input to the propagation system. It's stepping stone, not the destination. All right, so we've got a nice, significant prompt that we're going to copy into code. So I'm connected to my Life OS system, and it's going to be updating the whole file system in order to form this foundation. I didn't paste the transcript though. So two critical issues to surface before I do anything. Please confirm before I process. Issue one, the transcript was not pasted. The very last line of the prompt, literally placeholder. There is no transcript. Path mismatch in your instructions. Running checking. So I do need to give it the actual transcript, which again should be in the future created in such a way that it will automatically hit in the system. So here's the transcript. What else do you need me to decide? Now I'm wondering, like, I just copied and pasted this transcript and it doesn't have any of like the necessary data that maybe something like a voice memo on a phone has. But what's nice about that is that it's like interactive. The system is actually asking me questions to go further into versus voice memo, which is one directional. It's very different in terms of its quality. So what I tend to do is I tend to just copy back what I get from code back into chat so that it becomes aware of what we're doing. I did copy and paste the transcript. It doesn't match our conversation. There's no part one, part two instruction from me, no convention doc spec, no path references, no placeholder from pasting a transcript. We've been talking conversation about Life OS actually 7. Oh wait, sorry. I ended up pasting it into the wrong the wrong section, the wrong thread, right? So I pasted it into a different thread and it was like, whoa, 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 what are we talking about here? I have no idea. Code is right on every point. This is exactly the behavior you've been training. Refuse to fabricate, surface real conflicts, ask before creating structural folders, listen to it. Quick answers in order. The transcript code is correct that I gave you the prompt with a placeholder, not the transcript itself. That's by design. When you send the prompt, replace that. Path mismatch. Projects versus work. My mistake, not codes. I guessed at the path. Codes correction is right. NTW lives at 5. Work. Navigate the way, use that. This is also a small lesson worth noting. It shouldn't guess at file system pass. I can't see going forward. Blah, 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 blah. Pattern mismatch. Option A, what to send to Claude. Confirm on all 3. Create the inbox transcript. So I'm just having it kind of design the system itself, then repaste the full transcript. Again, the goal in this whole thing is to design a persistent, intentional system that I can put all of my life's work into it and have it create structural output. Because right now it's just, voice memos get put into a system, nothing ever happens from it. Even all these like really sophisticated conversations with these AIs just like get inputted, but then there's nothing that persists across the platform. This is what the promise of this whole agentic works. Just to repeat that again, I'm trying to create Aetherium as the intentional layer where it helps you orient towards your highest potential in alignment with a much bigger universal story, and help you make decisions along the way through this sort of structured reflection, contemplation, and flow, including work, but not as the primary input. I'm going to play some music. And also go to the bathroom. All right, so this Claude code is processing. I requested the ChatGPT export, but it said that it could take up to a couple of days. Let's see, send the confirmation, corrected prompt. Okay, it's working through it. Quick orientation on what to look at when it comes back so you can evaluate the output rather than just accept it. 3 things worth scrutinizing: the propagation candidates. Suggestion is the highest value output to read carefully. It's where code is making interpretive judgments. The decisions versus output split. This is the first time we've asked code to distinguish these. The convention doc itself, code is writing the rules that will govern every future ingestion. Read it the way you'd read a contract, not for what's there, but for what's missing or ambiguous. Things to look for are the source ID values, exactly what you specified. One thing not to worry about in this first pass: don't sweat formatting or whether the title is perfect. Those are easy to fix later. The structural decisions, schema fields, folder locations, gating rules are the expensive things to change once you have 10 transcripts ingested under them. Spend your attention there. When it's done, paste the result and we can stress test it together, particularly the propagation candidates list. That's where I'll have the most to say since it's the bridge to the propagation system. We'll define after this. Stream's still going. You're doing real work in public, by the way. Uh-oh. Yes, stream is still going. 1 hour in. I've thought about ending it, but at the same time, it's probably pretty interesting for people to see how I'm going about trying to build this whole ecosystem. 1 hour in is a real milestone. You cross the line from trying it out to did a thing. First episode is in the can either way. On whether to keep going, there's no right answer, but here are the actual considerations since you asked. Regions to wrap soon. You've been thinking hard for about an hour while also being on camera. That's cognitive load you're probably not fully feeling yet, but will when you stop. Streaming compounds fatigue in a way solo work doesn't. Episode 1 being 60 to 75 minutes is a perfectly respectable length. Nobody's going to think you bailed early. Longer doesn't mean better. You also have a natural arc that's about to close. Code is processing the first ingestion right now. When it returns, you'll review the output, confirm or adjust, and that's a clean ending beat. First transcript is in the system. Here's what it produced. That's a wrap on episode 1. If you keep going past that, you're starting a new arc on tired energy. Reasons to keep going. Watching someone evaluate AI output critically, actually reading what came back, catching mistakes, refining is generally useful content. Most people see polished AI demos. They don't see the back and forth where you push back on the model and it pushes back on you. That's the part of the workflow that's hard to learn from tutorials. Also, if code surfaces something interesting in the propagation candidates, that is a generative moment. Working through it live shows people what the system actually produces, not just what you hoped it would. My honest read: wrap when code comes back, review the output on camera, react to it honestly, including pointing out anything that's off or that surprised you, and end the episode there. That gives you a clean structure. I started by figuring out the format, ended by ingesting the first transcript and seeing what came back. That's a story. That's an episode. The temptation when streaming goes well is to keep riding the wave. The discipline is ending while you're still sharp because episode 2 needs you to come back, and you'll come back stronger if episode 1 didn't drain you flat. Also worth saying, you've been doing real work this whole time. The stream is documentation of that work, not a substitute for it. Don't let it's interesting for people pull you past your actual stamina. You can always do more episodes. You can't recover an hour of mediocre tail end content. All right, so system's still running. When code returns, that's your bell. Review on camera and clean. So this has all been in service of just trying to figure out how to ingest one stream properly, one voice session with good coverage. But the idea is to try and be a lot more intentional with what I'm actually going through to actually help it build over time, which again was the whole point of the session yesterday. Disregard that last post. Please share with me the download for the interview process for us. That was in a different thread. So this is part of the issue, is just dealing with all these freaking threads. Let's see. Can you give me the download for the interview process we came up with to fill in gaps in the Life OS system? Because again, I've started populating everything into the folders. I'm literally taking everything that I have on my whole computer from the last 15 years and running it through the Life OS system to have it go through everything and file it properly. That's a huge work stream in and of itself. All right, so I've got this ecosystem interview guide. Let's see, Life OS. I don't even know where it belongs. Maybe in core system. Now download, move it into Life OS and actually close out. We've been circling the close out for several messages. Yesterday, my session was like, all right, get off. I'm done. Don't talk to me anymore. All right, so came back. So before I even read it, I literally copy what Claude Code comes back with and just drop it into chat. Drop it into chat. Code did good work, better than good. It caught things I would have wanted it to catch. Let me give you the read through, since this is the moment that matters. What code did right that's worth registering? It made 2 executable extensions to the convention and flagged them as extensions rather than presenting them as spec. That's exactly the right behavior. That's a code that's thinking, not just executing. Both extensions are good. Keep them. The ref suffix makes cross-link docs visually distinct. It noticed the underscore system conventions versus system core conventions thing again, defaulted to your literal spec, flagged it for review, then mixed it midstream. It marked the ingestion incomplete, pending NTW cross-link confirmation. The gate is working as designed. Now the 5 flagged items go in order, 5 aspects versus 5 elements. This is the most important catch in the whole response. Code is right to flag it as possible fabrication. Reading back through last night's transcript, voice Claude introduced 5 aspects framework, context, state, role, stage, right, unprompted, and you didn't correct it. Then later you talked about earth, water, air, fire, practices for the 7-day cycle, which is the elements framework. So there are likely 2 things going on. Either A, voice Claude hallucinated as 5 aspects framework, and the elements are the practice layer on top of it. This is the kind of thing the system is supposed to catch, and it just did. Resolve this before the interview today. If it's A, you need to be aware that voice Claude confabulates structured frameworks when given philosophical conversation, and you'll be more skeptical. Some are buying the velocity. This is almost certainly a transcription error. Voice transcripts mishear phrases like the presence or the experience or the velocity of X all the time. You said something. The auto-transcribe rendered it as velocity. Voice Claude smoothed over it with access to you, your guidance, your presence, easy fix. This is also a forward-looking lesson. Auto-transcripts will have errors, and the convention should say what to do about them, worth adding a line to the convention doc, something like transcription errors in raw transcripts are annotated in line. A mirror, a compass, a knife. This isn't fabrication, it's you. Those are your metaphors said live in the transcript. Leave them in the session doc as captured. Book course, chrisporter.me, project home. This is the real architectural question. It's worth answering deliberately. 3 options with my read on each. Under personal brand, under navigate the way for the philosophy, under Aetherium, makes sense if Aetherium is the parent frame. These 3 options actually map to 3 different theories of what your work is. That's not a filing question, it's an identity question. Don't let Claude or me resolve it for you. This belongs in today's interview. On the conventions extension, blah, 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 recommended next moves in order. First, confirm the NTW crosslink. Code already created the file at active sessions. Voice Ethereum architecture, the action is done. The gate just needs you to mark it confirmed. Second, decide on the 5 aspects question, either Claude. What was a voice Claude fabrication? Third, end the stream. You've now fully got the interview tomorrow now has a much better agenda than it did this morning. By the way, 5 concrete things to resolve. That's the system working. The interview tomorrow now has a much better agenda than it did this morning. Third, okay, so now it's like a matter of making decisions. So first, confirm the NTW crosslink. First, confirmed. Update the registry entry to remove incomplete. Second, decide on the 5 aspects. Second, so it is added to a canon as a stub. Don't leave this ambiguous overnight. Either tell code that was a voice fabrication, flag it as such for the session doc, and add a convention note. Sounds like somewhat of a fabrication. Let's make sure that I'm providing the necessary clarity in the interview. So the plan is to do an interview session with Claude Voice. Third, end the stream. You've now fully ingested first transcript and 5 real questions surfaced from the interview. The interview tomorrow now has a much better agenda than it did this morning. I'll upload what the interview process proposed yesterday and how we can revise that in light of the conversation last night. What can we show to the live stream audience as a structured output that now has been put into our Life OS system as a clean output, right? Because again, the main value in this whole system is unstructured stream of consciousness that gets ingested is structured. The unstructured stream gets saved, but so does the structured output. Good, both answers right. The fabrication acknowledgement is honest. On the fabrication, on showing the audience something structured, the cleanest thing to show is the session doc itself. Claude Voice Ethereum architecture. It's a single file, well structured, demonstrates the full ingestion pipeline working and tells the story of what the system does without you needing to narrate it. Then the summary section, then jump to propagation candidates, skip a few things to flag while showing. One thing not to show, don't show the convention doc itself unless someone in chat specifically asks. It's the most important file in the system right now, but it reads like a spec. Useful for the operating system, not for understanding what the system does. The 1-line frame for the audience, if you want a sentence that sets up what they're about to see. Last night I had a voice conversation with an AI about what I'm building. Today, that conversation is a structured document inside my system with 5 specific things flagged for me to resolve. That's what Life OS does. It turns raw thinking into something the rest of the system can actually use. That's roughly the value proposition in a sentence, and it's true. If you're ready, paste the interview script, and we'll work on that. Okay, what's the prompt that I need to send back to Claude Code to close out this session. Okay, closing out the session. 3 things to do: confirm and update registry, annotate the 5 aspects, fabrication. The voice transcript is a voice Claude fabrication, not a real Ethereum framework. Update the session accordingly. Extend the convention with 2 small additions: transcription error handling, AI fabrication handling, incomplete, surface anything else. Why this prompt is shaped the way that it is: the 4 numbered actions are roughly in order of risk. Confirmations and annotations first, convention updates second, session log third, and final, anything else sweet to catch what neither of us thought of. Okay, so I copy the prompt back to Claude. So this is really me trying to stress test this system, because for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've just been having all of this unstructured back and forth with the AIs without actually having persistence and something that will help me build now, as opposed to just getting clear. I want all of this to be building on each other, on itself, with who I am, what my philosophy is, and what it is that we're building and offering to the world. Let me first verify the file system state for orphans, loose ends, then execute. So what do you think? Is this, do you think this would be valuable for people to be able to just have raw input, stream of consciousness, and then run it through their system to like build out an entire self over time? Seems relevant in my mind for everybody. Nobody wants to be stuck at a computer trying to build all this out over time. Okay, now extending the convention with the 3 additions. Editing transcript, ingestion. So yeah, the idea is that that Ethereum becomes a practice. It becomes a practice of having structured input into a system that persists over time and helps you get clear on your intentions, helps you make better decisions, and utilizing a system that actually helps you grow and build. That's the that seems to be the goal. All right, so I'm going to show the Life OS system. Let's see, work, Ethereum, inbox, transcripts, Claude Voice Raw MD. So it told me what I should show. System core registries, transcripts, close with the registry. Cleanest thing to show is the session doc itself. It's a single file, well structured. Where does this live, though? On showing the audience something structured, the cleanest thing to show is the session doc itself. Claude Voice Ethereum architecture. It's a single file, well structured, demonstrates the full ingestion pipeline. So there's inbox, active, sessions. All right, so here's an example of what it is. Let's see, window. So here's the structured output. When it was ingested, what it is: Ethereum architecture, distribution and business model, pre-interview briefing. One paragraph navigation system. We mapped out how Aetherium becomes the intentional navigation system for your life and work, connecting your philosophy, your voice, your vision into one orchestrated machine that turns conversations into revenue-generating content and products. Life OS is the operational infrastructure that actually executes on that intention, while your 6-platform distribution strategy ensures your teachings reach and convert the people who need them. Basically, you're building a navigation system for yourself first and then packaging it so others can navigate their own lives the same way. Decisions made, open questions, connections, propagation candidates, transcription, fabrication issues. Notes, this was framed by the user explicitly as a pre-planning preview session. So this is a .md file that's now saved into the system. Coverage. Life OS introduces a personal intelligence system underlying infrastructure layer. Aetherium positioned conceptually as the orchestration intention layer above Life OS. Vision of voice, transcription, folder structure, Google Drive sync, Obsidian tasks, multi-platform content, memory persistence, Ethereum Compass, confirm live, 7-day cycle, produce product detail, 3 content pillars, revenue model, key output, 6 platform native content drafts, pre-interview structured outline summary, Ethereum Life OS business and product plan, decisions made. So a lot came out of that conversation. So if I go back to code, loose ends, none. So that seems to be a pretty clear output. So I'm copying what Claude code pasted back in, clean close. Code did exactly what was asked, caught its own booking. The registry never actually had the incomplete marker because timing, and surfaced the one thing it noticed that was outside its turns. That last bit is the behavior you want. I'm reporting what I see, even if it's not a problem, because you should know I saw it. A few things worth registering before you end the stream. On the ecosystem interview guide, code flagged. That's a file that appeared in system core that neither you nor Claude created in the session. So it actually picked up that I dropped that interview guide into the system. Either it's from yesterday's earlier work, but for now, make a note to look at it tomorrow before the interview on what you accomplished today, worth saying out loud, because it's easy to lose track of in a 90-minute session. So what I did today, you established the foundational convention for how every future input, voice, chat, stream, video, memos, enters Life OS. You did the first ingestion under that convention. You extended the convention with 2 real lessons that came out of the work itself: transcription errors, AI fabrication handling. You logged the session and you streamed all of it live as episode 1. That's a lot for one session. More to the point, it's foundational work. The convention you wrote today will cover hundreds of future ingestions. The ROI compounds. On the live audience side, before you close, show them. So it wants me to show you this other thing. So let's see. It wants me to show the system, personal decisions, and O5 ingestion convention. All right, so it wants me to show you this transcript ingestion convention. It's the narrative version of what just happened, written for future you to remember, but it works for an audience too. Reading it out loud is a clean way to summarize the episode without you having to recap from memory. The closing line for the stream. Okay, so transcript ingestion convention, first ingestion, decision log. Establishing the transcript ingestion convention for Life OS and processing the first transcript through it. Convention authored. Source session context. The day's work was structured as a stress test to find the convention for transcript ingestion while using it with the very first transcript serving as the test case. The transcript itself, the April 24th mobile Claude voice conversation that mapped Ethereum as the parent intentional layer with LifeOS as its operational infrastructure was load-bearing for two reasons. It was both the artifact being ingested and the briefing document for the formal ecosystem interview. The session was streamed publicly as YouTube Episode 1, Building Ethereum in Public, Figuring Out the Format, deliberately conflating the work as the documentation of the work. What was accomplished? Convention established, first transcript fully ingested, convention extended mid-session, first fabrication caught and contained, stream went live as episode 1. Key decisions made, Ethereum as parent frame, LifeOS as infrastructure, conventions and registries live under system core, cross-link pattern with ref suffix, incomplete marker pattern, raw transcripts are never edited, series framing locked, building Ethereum in public, what was built. So the transcription ingestion process, which I'm not supposed to show, transcripts, flat append-only ledger, the raw transcript, the process session document, and the NTW cross-link reference. Open items going into the next session. So ideally what I'm going to be doing is saying, okay, what are the open things that I need to be deciding on going forward? Patterns worth remembering, stress testing conventions on first use, surfaces real gaps, AI fabrication is a real failure mode that needs its own protocol, conflating work and documentation of work as a leaning curve cost. All right, so it says you don't need a polished intro, something honest is better, roughly. So the first transcript is in the system. Now the convention is written. Tomorrow's or today's interview has 5 real questions to resolve that didn't exist this morning. Episode 1 is in the books, and I'll see you for episode 2. Peace.